I think as influencers or public figures, one of the most important things is to be aware of your influence and the power that you have. And even though I still consider myself a tiny, minuscule, microscopic, super small channel, I do realize that there's a lot of people who do watch my videos and sometimes take inspiration from my own rabbit care. And I'm receiving an influx of comments talking about people wanting to take their rabbits outside or even house them outside permanently. Now, I have no issue with people housing their rabbits completely outdoors. I know this is pretty unpopular opinion, and especially the rabbit community on YouTube, because indoor rabbits seems to be the big thing. I do think both lifestyles can be completely enriching and great for the rabbit, and just like I don't think free roam is best suited for every single rabbit, I don't think indoor living is best suited for every single rabbit. However, I haven't really wanted to talk about this topic because there is so much to cover and I really don't feel experienced enough to discuss it. If you're curious about having your rabbits live outdoor 24/7, I'm really not the person to ask because I've never done it. I do, however, really enjoy bringing my rabbits outside for some playtime, and I do want to talk about some of the dangers that you should consider when bringing your rabbits outdoors, and hopefully this can help you decide whether it's something you want to do. Now, before I talk about the dangers, I do want to say that housing rabbits indoors does come with plenty of risks as well. For example, if your rabbits eat baseboards, a lot of the times the paint used is actually toxic. There's also materials in your house like leather, suede, fabric, foam that are all extremely very dangerous to rabbits, and even rabbits doing their natural behaviors like digging and chewing in a house can be extremely dangerous. The same way we have to take precautions in our own homes to keep our rabbits safe, the same thing comes when it's outdoors. But for some reason, no one's willing to talk about the dangers outdoors and actually how to solve them and help them. Now, this is not a comprehensive video, but there are very few videos that actually discuss rabbits even being outdoors on YouTube. So I do want to compile some of the knowledge that I have, and the more I learn, I'll be definitely sure to make updated videos in the future about how to go about this safely. If you do have outdoor rabbits or take your rabbits outdoors, let me know what your thoughts are, and even if you have indoor rabbits. The first thing that's important to consider before even taking your rabbits outside is, why do you want to take them outside? Well, if the answer is just because it's more convenient for you or because you want to get a couple of cute pictures, it might not necessarily be worth it. But if you do think taking them outside could add a form of enrichment to their lives, then I'd highly recommend it. When I take my rabbits out, for example, I'm able to have them in this huge playpen, which provides them a lot of room to run around. My rabbits also really enjoy foraging and digging, and these are just behaviors that they can't exhibit the same way indoors, and they also love munching on the fresh grass. Now, like I said before, I do think there's just as many dangers indoors as there are outdoors, but because the outdoor dangers aren't really discussed and no one really knows exactly what they are, I do think having your rabbits indoor might be just a little bit safer simply because we have a little bit more information on it. There's a lot of dangers outdoors, some of which we know of, for example, the weather. If it's very hot outside, rabbits can easily get heat stroke, and obviously if it's very cold outside, they tolerate cold a lot better than most people would think, but the issue is if their water dries up, then they can actually dehydrate. One way I like to help this is by choosing a really shady area. For example, this area is right near a tree, so they have tons of foliage to keep them really cool, and I never like to let my rabbits outside unless there's super dark shade. For example, as you guys can see there, it's really cold over there, and they have another layer of shade through the tunnel, so they can easily get out of the heat. I also personally don't let my rabbits outside if it's raining or snowing because the setup that I have just isn't ideal for that. There's no area that's fully weatherproof for them to get out of the rain or the snow, so if it is raining or snowing, I just take them indoors. I also don't let my rabbits outside when there's snow on the ground or when the grass is all dead because they really don't enjoy it. They're usually uncomfortable and there's no point. Another thing you have to consider before letting your rabbits outdoors is pesticides. One, whether your family actually uses them and whether you have used them in the past. Sometimes, even if it's been a couple months, there still can be some areas that are lingering. So I think it's really good to make sure you haven't used pesticides for as long as possible before you take the risk. Also, if your neighbors are getting their lawn sprayed, that can actually transition over into your yard. So make sure you're keeping your rabbits safe from that. Also, it's not just pesticides. Different fertilizers can actually be toxic, and even different bug sprays or different sunscreens that you use normally might not be safe for your rabbits. So make sure you do a lot of research. Another thing to consider is predators. My main issue with predators is aerial predators, but I'm not super worried because we do have a lot of trees in my yard, and I do also like to add an extra preventative by having this blanket over it. From what I've researched about chickens and how people protect them from hawks, hawks really are not going to swoop down if there's unless there's like at least 6 feet of area that they can like go through. Otherwise their wings can get caught. So I like to make sure that there's always a blanket over half of it, and sometimes I do the other half as well. But in this specific spot, since there's a lot of foliage, I'm not too worried. There's also obviously wild animal predators. This again is not the best setup. Where I live in a pretty urban area, we don't have any foxes, raccoons, or anything like that. Probably the biggest predator we have is like a squirrel, and that's not really a predator. So I don't have very like secure predator-proof fencing. I just have an X-pen. My main predators that I want to keep my rabbits safe from are from like house pets, like cats and dogs. We don't have any outdoor cats in my neighborhood, so I'm not worried about that. But I do always want to make sure that they're contained in the backyard, just in case someone has their dog out or anything like that. It's also important to consider different diseases, especially right now when there's a very severe rabbit virus going around. I encourage you to do a lot more research about it, but if you do live in one of the high like areas where there's been a lot of cases, maybe don't take your rabbits outside. And especially if you live near a wild rabbit population, or even if you know people with other rabbits, it's just best not to take them outside because it is an airborne virus. Actually, don't quote me on that. I'm not sure if it's airborne, but I do know that it can spread without direct contact. So even if your rabbits are in a playpen, and even if a wild rabbit comes and sleeps next to them, or even just sits on the grass and your rabbits are on the area of grass later, they can possibly become infected. And because there really are no symptoms, the main symptom is death. You might not even notice it. Another thing to consider is enrichment. Especially if you have a single rabbit, they just might not enjoy being outdoors because they're away from you and they want to spend time with you because you're like their bonded mate. When my rabbits are outdoors, since I'm not able to interact with them, I always like to make their outdoor playpen a lot more full and exciting than their indoor ones. For example, they have lots of different tunnels to jump on, and I like to have little foraging toys all over just to keep them entertained. Also, make sure you do research about the animals you have in your area. For example, rabbit pee, or not rabbit pee, raccoon pee can actually be very toxic to rabbits. I also don't like to let my rabbits out if I know that my dog has been urinating in the area. My dog urinates and poos in an area of our yard that I don't let my rabbits have access to. But if you have a dog that kind of does it all over, then maybe just be careful where you choose your spot. So that's just a little bit of information I have and things that I like to follow when I do take my rabbits outside. I've been doing this for a couple years, so I feel pretty comfortable with the way I do it. However, I do think if I was new to rabbits and I just got my rabbits, I'm not sure if I would take them outside because especially the first time is probably the biggest risk because you really don't know how your rabbits are going to adapt to it. Let me know what your guys' stances are on outdoor rabbits. Like I said before, my rabbits are indoor rabbits, but I do like to let them play outside. I do understand that rabbits don't play the way we humans do. It's not like sending a kid outside and being like, entertain yourself. But I think there's obviously a lot of things for them to do. And especially with the rabbits being bonded and having each other, they have a constant playmate and constantly have someone to do something with. Okay. Bye! Also, I did want to add, I would personally follow all these rules for supervised playtime and unsupervised playtime. A lot of people ask what I do for my rabbits outdoors. I call it lightly supervised playtime because I don't like to let them outside if I'm going to be out of the house. And the backyard I have full full view of from my kitchen, so I can usually just spy on them throughout the day. And like I don't necessarily go outside and watch them every second, but I don't let them just be out here for hours and hours without checking up on them.